Esta conferencia comenzará a grabarse.
We have a thematic today that is probably complex and with a lot of different perspectives. So yeah, today one proposal is to if we need more time, to take something like extra 30 minutes if necessary, okay, if needed. Okay, so good morning everybody. There are still 2 minutes to start. But anyway, for those of you that are new, okay, we usually divide our session on 3 blocks. The first one is to set the table, to share from the experts that are joining us today the conceptual framework. Later we will go through the systems to go through 2 different blocks. One will be about needs and disruption, and another about potential solutions. As I say at the beginning, today is a little special because we will have also a presentation from the JRC of one specific tool on supply chain raw materials. Okay, so we will have 2 blocks in the conceptual block. Sorry, the first one will be with the JRC, and the second one will be conducted by 3 different representatives of our cluster environment, speaking about the experience on what is the center of today's session, the possible or the possibility of a disruption on the plastics supply chain and what to do with it. Okay, that is the proposal for today. And as we want to be very serious with the time, we will start immediately. Okay, Constantine, are you there? I don't see you, or not yet. Okay, we need to wait a little. So let me just one moment. We will have you can share your ideas in the chat for sure, and we will have also post in the ECCP COVID19 Forum where you will be able also to share share information and continue that dialogue after the end of this session.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This is Simone Manfredi, JRC.
Welcome, Simone.
Thank you.
I don't see Constantine in the list of attendants for now.
He should be joining. I see my colleague Christina.
Okay, we will wait for 1-2 minutes. I suppose that he will be the one making the presentation. Is that right?
He should be the one. Yes. Eventually, I have no problem with starting. Also, because at 9, unfortunately, I have to switch to another meeting, and then my colleagues will continue.
Okay. Okay. So yes. Anyway,
sorry about that.
Welcome. No problem.
Thanks.
We will wait for some moments.
This is Jaco Huisman, also from the JRC, colleague of Simone. I just asked Constantine privately whether he's managing to access GoToMeeting. I know he's on a corporate computer, so it's sometimes not so easy to get in. But he's not responding to my private message yet.
I am connected through my iPhone and it works fine, but you also have to download the app from the phone, but it works.
Yeah, we know that from the corporative computer on the European Commission, usually it's not working. I don't know why. Probably one rule in the
we
firewall.
have many security constraints, so to say.
Yeah, But please tell him that there is always the possibility to join through phone. So you can call to the phone number that probably you have in the message and introduce the code that is also shared in the message, the invitation message. And that way it's quite sure that he will be able to join us. If not, another possibility, Simon, it will be for you to introduce us the JRC while we wait for Constantine.
Yeah. Jaco, will you in the meantime try to contact Constantine via phone?
Yes, I'm doing it already. Yep.
Okay, fantastic.
So,
okay,
Simon?
I can take a slow start. It's no problem. I have my slides in front of me in the computer. Of course, I cannot share them via the phone. So
okay, I will share them now. Sorry, I need to switch here. Let me change now. Here they are. Do you see it? Do you see them?
I don't see them in the phone right now. Let's see.
Yes, we can see it. Yes.
You can see it?
Perfect. Thank you.
This
is the first slide.
Okay. I wonder why I cannot see them in the phone. I'm trying to see if there is anything I can do.
Anyway, for those of you that have just arrived, the proposal for today is to make a extended session. So probably we will finish later around 10 o'clock if necessary, okay? Because we have a lot of speakers and sometimes, as you can see, complex to organize it, okay?
Yeah.
Simon,
okay.
we are if you
I will
have
start. Yeah, I have it in front of me from my laptop, but I'm starting from slide 1, so there should be no problem.
Okay.
Okay, so first of all, I mean, on behalf of Constantine, thank you for this opportunity to be part of this meeting and present a few ideas, few concepts from our own work. I believe it's really an opportunity, and we are looking forward to follow a bit the next steps and see how we can integrate and complement with our work. Okay, so what I'm gonna present briefly is, let's say, the core platform, the raw materials information system that we have developed and we are maintaining. And this platform is important because it really collects most of the work we do on raw materials within the unit and then the JRC. So this is the raw materials information system. I will now skip the outline, but you will see I will touch upon several topics accessible through the RMIS. So our way to display information with a supply chain viewer, some information about specific strategic value chains, material system analysis, vulnerability and resilience, and so on. Now, if I move to slide number 3, and you will see on the left side of the monitor of the screen the home page of the RMIS, and then with another click some text should pop up. Are you with me with the slides?
Yes. We are seeing the text. Sorry, science.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So basically, for us the work with RMIS started in 2015. And the mandate was the first circular economy action plans from 5 years ago that gave us the task to develop our raw materials information system with focus on non-fuel, non-agriculture raw materials. And we like to address this topic really using a supply chain perspectives from primary to secondary sources and follow the entire stages of the value chains. RMIS tries to act as the reference access point to knowledge, to the knowledge for such class of raw materials. We are also, let's say, endorsed by the Horizon 2020 funding schemes. So some classes of projects have to link to the RMIS, have to establish a contact with us, and to provide us with the knowledge they produce if we find this knowledge relevant for policy support on raw materials. Moving to the next slides. We have here, if you click a few times, let's say 3 components, very new, where also, of course, RMIS is very active. So I don't need to go into details, but we are actively supporting the new Green Deal for Europe, all the topic around the stronger Europe in the world and fit for a digital age. So, but no, don't need to go into more details here. Then on the next slide, where I have again very big the homepage of the RMIS. Yes. So
yes,
here, fantastic. It's just to show that I don't know if you are familiar a bit with RMIS. I invite you to have a look and look the various tiles. But basically, our logic is to structure the knowledge into a number of thematic tiles. These are now 12. Some of them are more qualitative in nature, like the one on top related to policy and legislation, or the terminology, the library. We have a very extensive library with a lot of documents and reports in. And then we have more quantitative information and tiles. For instance, there is a specific tiles related to our work on critical raw materials. As you know, every 3 years there is a list of critical raw materials, where DG GROW is the reference DG for this, and we have supported their work in the last couple of lists. And yes, we are now impatiently waiting for the 2020 list to be released, and I assume this will happen soon. So there is a lot of work on the critical raw materials. If you see the tile next to it is the one dedicated to monitoring, where we have the raw material scoreboard, which is also another development organized by DG GROW, where we support actively. What is the scoreboard? It's a collection of indicators that provides a lot of information, mostly quantitative information on the raw material sector. Then we have tiles dedicated specifically to the topic of circular economy and secondary raw materials. We have a strong focus on sustainability, both from the environmental and social point of view, and SDGs are included. We have a lot of work going on economics and trades. Then I will keep it for later, this block called industrial value chains and material flows, because it's very relevant for the purpose of today's meeting. Then we have this tile on the bottom left on raw materials profiles, where basically we consider all the 80+ materials that are considered in the criticality assessment, and we develop specific profiles for these materials, which have several layers of information related to sustainability, to trade, the resources, reserves, and so on. We do similar types of profiles for specific European countries in the next block, European country profiles. And then we have a tile called Raw Materials Knowledge Gateway, where we try to link and make more visible the knowledge provided or generated by Horizon 2020 projects, by academia, by certain member states, EIT raw materials, and so on. All this is work in progress. So if you from time to time connect to RMIS, you will see new developments. And we hope we can really now very quickly soon update new knowledge, which is ready to be uploaded, but the COVID situation made it a bit more difficult. Okay, now if I click and move to the next slide, is basically a zoom in of the tile on industrial value chains and material flows, which is with, now I put this red border. Yeah, so by clicking on this tile, then you enter the second level menu within the tile, and you will see users can access topics related to material flows analysis or material system analysis, which then my colleague Christina will present in more details. We have information on the battery value chain. Jaco will give information on this and other topics. So we think that maybe this is now the best fit tile where most of the knowledge is particularly relevant for today's meeting. Now, if Constantine is connected, he may want to move to the next slides, or I can continue.
Welcome, Constantine. Are you there? I see that there is one user. I don't know if you can speak, Constantine.
Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Perfectly.
Okay. Good morning. Sorry for the IT problems that I haven't didn't allow me to connect in time. I would suggest, because we are probably under time pressure, to move to the end, to the slides at the end, Simone, that are very relevant for what we are discussing here. So effectively the supply chain, viewer a little bit, and then the work on LCA and flows by the end. Yeah. So. Okay.
Would you like me to say a few words very briefly on the supply chain viewer, and then I pass the stage to our colleagues on? Yeah. So basically, clicking on the next slide and say double clicking, so we have some text. Let's say our main attempt to make it more visual, the way the supply chains are shown in their MIS, is to develop this supply chain viewer. What is it? We have considered the 80+ materials in the criticality assessment. We have considered in 2 details their supply and value chains, and we connected and we provided this graphic representation. So clicking on the next slide, you have some examples. It's a bit small, but basically for us, the supply chain viewer provides an overview of networks of selected raw materials, and these networks are made of the raw materials, the supplying countries, the products application, and the economic sectors that use such products and materials. So when accessing the supply chain viewer, users can select the focus of their investigation. So they can select 1 or 2 specific materials and see their supply chains and whether their supply chains are connected, or they can choose the perspective of a supplying country or of an application, for instance, batteries, and so on. So there is a logic. Of course, the volume of the arrows connecting the nodes are proportional to the amounts, to the flows. And what else? The underlying data are currently based on the Criticality 2017 assessment. And we plan to further expand and improve the supply chain viewer by using more and more data from material system analysis. Now, I will not need to, if you click on the next slide, there are other examples of, let's say, the focus on a specific substance or an applications like magnets, or on the bottom figure, there is the supply chains of iron, crude steel, and so on, to see how the value chains is connected to the various nodes. Now, unless Constantine wants to say more about the supply chain viewer, I would like to give the words to Jaco on the next slide, with the example of batteries in the context of some specific strategic value chains.
Hi, Jaco.
Yes.
Do you want to take the presentation, or should I pass through it for you?
I think it's only 2 slides, so it's okay to do this animated. This is an example of a strategic value chain we have been analyzing. Before the COVID crisis, keep in mind here, when you look at the topic of raw materials, the main concern is a very high dependency of Europe for raw materials. On average, this is like 95%. And it's a big issue when there are issues with supply disruptions, but there's also an element of competitiveness. So as you know, there's a lot of investment in the battery sector. And what we have been doing here, if you show the animations, is to also look long-term ahead into the amounts of raw materials used for different batteries for e-mobility in particular. So on the demand side and the demand side evolution, as well as the supply side. And there are, let's say, significant concerns that supply and demand will be out of balance in the long term. That is one part of this story. In this analysis, one of the problems is also that the supply of raw materials is extremely concentrated in just a few countries. With the example of cobalt in the Congo is quite well known. And this is not going away, even when Europe is doing more to diversify supply, open new mines. Still, the dependency will remain. Plus, also in later stages of the supply chain, because usually, if there's a supply chain disruption on the raw material level, you don't see it. People start complaining when a certain component or a product is not delivered, but the raw materials are basically everywhere underneath. And yeah, that is a genuine concern, which we see kind of panning out at the moment with the COVID crisis, that these supply chain disruptions are now perhaps taking a bit more seriously. The second part of the equation, maybe the next slide is a good example for technologies we have been looking at. Last year, a study was released with our colleagues in Patton as well on 5 technologies, including batteries, but also fuel cells, robotics, drones, and additive manufacturing, as well as electronics, which are all used both for civil as well as military applications. If you click on the animation, you will see that we have been looking at the raw material stages. So what happened is methodology is created to look at 2 factors. So we have an assessment methodology that looks both at the supply chain concentration, so where the raw materials are coming from, as well as the world governance indicators on the stability of the countries where we are sourcing. And basically the same approach is also used to look at the supply chain concentration and stability in the levels of processed materials, so advanced materials, as well as components and complete assemblies, for instance, complete drones, complete robots, and so on. And here you see the outcomes for the 5 technologies evaluated. In the next slide, the example of 3D printing, where I spent quite some time myself, is you also see that for future technologies, which can have a significant impact on our manufacturing capabilities, we will see an increasing demand for more exotic materials. 3D printing will also eliminate quite some manufacturing stages, because you can directly go from raw materials to almost complete components and assemblies, for instance. If you click further, the problem also with this is, at the moment we are looking a lot into the resilience of the supply chain and what happens with disruptions. But the raw materials are also key to our competitiveness in the future. If you master the quality and the availability of high quality raw materials, you can really fine-tune this with the example here, 3D printing technology. So mastering the technological capabilities as well as have good recipes for the raw materials being used is giving you the real competitive edge. And here we have genuine concerns about the position of Europe, because we have this huge material dependency and we're kind of 95% dependent on the outside for our supply. So on the right hand side you see the various supply risk for different materials also ranked and listed, and this work will also be updated. There will be a new report becoming available covering this technology for more materials with the latest assessment of critical raw materials, but then also including other technologies like low carbon technologies, wind and PV, as well as electronics in a more elaborate way. So this is just in a snapshot the analysis work we are doing, which is very much bottom up, looking at the raw material and process material stages first. That's it from my side.
Thank you very much. So who is speaking now? Christina?
No, good morning. This is Kostas from the JRC. Just one slide. So in this slide, we try to conceptualize how we are working to go beyond the supply chain viewer. I mean, how we can dive into a more detailed analysis of each raw material value chain. So we are taking material by material and we are mapping all processes, flows, products, inputs and outputs in each process, and all these stages are allocated to the relevant NACE 4 sector and to the CPA code. So in this way, if we do this for all materials, then we will have at the manufacturing sectors all the interconnections and linkages between them and raw materials.
Thank you. We are quite late, okay, and it's extremely interesting. So, and we will extend the duration of today's session to 1 hour and a half. It's clear that we will need that, okay, but I will suggest to try to speed up because we are just in the middle of your presentation now.
Maybe we can skip slide 14 and 15 and we go directly to slide 16 on MSA, where Christina can be very brief. Yeah. And I have to disconnect now. Thanks again, and we keep in touch. Sorry for this.
Grazie mille, Simone.
Buona giornata. Bye bye.
Buona giornata, Simone.
Grazie. Bye.
Hello, everyone. Christina Matus, also working from the JRC. So I will be very brief. The idea is just to show you the work that we are doing on the material system analysis. So explain what it is and what kind of information we can get. So what you see in your screen is what we call the complex Sankey diagram. And it's the main output of the main visual output of the material system analysis. So a material system analysis is a comprehensive data set of flows and stocks of a material throughout the value chain of this material in the EU economy. So we can have detailed information on extraction, processing, manufacturing, use, collection, and recycling. And we can see all the trade flows and waste flows and recycling flows. Behind this, there is a detailed data set where the data is presented in even a more disaggregated level. If you pass to this next slide, please. Okay, so which are the main uses of this data is, of course, our goal is to inform decision making on material supply, to help to identify key opportunities to secure resources in the EU economy. But we are also trying to find information to calculate monitoring indicators. And the key one is the end-of-life recycling input rate, but also indicators related with our dependency on imports of these materials. We have also a special focus on batteries, but this study can be used to identify other technologies and other products, to have information on those. We are covering several policy needs, such as the critical raw materials, circular economy. We have also the raw material scoreboard, and we can help also to give information to the strategic action plan on batteries. Next slide, please. So just to give you an overview of how many MSAs there are already in the, so in the RMIS we have already information of 31 material system analysis, but we are currently developing 14 new material system analysis. If you pass to the next slide, please. So these are just to show you the main outputs that we have from these new studies that we are conducting. So as I said, there is special focus on batteries, and we have already a report on that, but we had also a revision of the specifications on the methodology next of the material system analysis. Okay, this is just to show you how we aggregate data and which are how we present the results. So this material system analysis can give us very detailed information, and we can draw up the complete value chain of a material, showing hotspots also, so we can identify where the EU, for instance, is dependent on this, which are the stages of the value chain that are dependent from outside sources. We can also show the share of uses of these materials, both in the manufacturing and the processing stage. And if you click one more time, I can just show which kind of indicators we can calculate. So these are some just examples from our work. Sorry that it's very small, but okay, we can calculate, for instance, the EU import reliance at each stages of the value chain, and also the end-of-life recycling input rate is a key indicator for circular economy monitoring. Collection rates and loss rates, as we can also calculate with this. But there are also other indicators. These are just examples. As I said, the outputs of this material system analysis are also very visual. So I showed in the first slide the complex Sankey diagram, but we can also aggregate the data and present it in this more simplified Sankey diagram. Okay, that's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, who is the next one?
Yes, it's me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Constantine. Welcome.
No, it's Simone.
Sorry.
I'm Simone.
Sorry. Simone. Sorry.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to participate to this meeting. I have just a couple of slides, final slides, to show that on top of the activities that my colleagues presented, we also do activities related to the evaluation of the potential environmental impacts of specific supply chains. Also specific plastic supply chains by means of the life cycle assessment method that probably many of you already know, and focusing also on the use of different feedstock sources in the supply chains. While the focus now has been mostly on the supply chains related to specific products in different sectors of the where plastics are used. Of course, this method and approaches can also be applied to the whole value chain, so to the flows estimated for the whole value chains. For instance, through the approach discussed by my colleagues in the previous slides. If you can move to the next slides, please. And yes, so specifically in the last couple of years, we have been involved in a big project with the aim of developing a common basis to conduct as much as possible reliable, consistent, and robust life cycle assessment studies of plastic products and articles relying on different feedstock sources. Including traditional feedstocks such as oil and natural gas, and compared to more innovative and alternative feedstocks such as biomass, and also CO2 captured from point emission sources, for instance. And so not only application of LCA methodology, but also contribution to the development of specific methodological approach in this field. And specifically, we could demonstrate the applicability of the method by means of 10 specific case studies on 10 specific product supply chain. In my last slides, if you can move to it. Thank you. Just a few words on the method, as many of you is aware of. We build upon the PEF that stands for Product Environmental Footprint, which is a common method adopted in 2013 by the European Commission to provide a common basis to evaluate the environmental performances of products or product supply chains. And building and expanding upon this approach, we have developed a method to conduct as much as possible consistent and reliable comparison for plastic supply chain, which can be used to address environmental issues related to such supply chain. I think that for now this is okay as a general information. Then if more details are needed, we can go into the discussion later.
Perfect. Thank you. Any last word last for now, because we will return to you. Sure, but
I will intervene just saying, I mean, we tried to show as many things as possible now because it was the first moment when we intended to introduce ourselves to the group. We first of all are extremely happy that we were invited to attend also next meetings, and we will do happily this, not with so many people, but with our experts on the specific domains. We will be always available to present in more detail some other aspects that may be of interest to you. And for the moment now, because we took quite a long time, and thank you for your attention.
No, you are really welcome, and I think that your contribution will be of great, enormous value, not only today, but in the next sessions. Feel part of the group, please. Feel not invited, but as members, and be totally proactive, because we will grow with you. So you are really very extremely welcome. Thank you very much. We will jump to the next presentation, and we will return, because I'm sure that we will need to return to you. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. The next presentation is from Dolors Pla from the Advanced Material Cluster in Catalonia. Dolors, are you there? Yes.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Yeah.
I will give you the presentation, right? Or do you prefer that I share your presentation?
That you share. I sent you yesterday
Okay.
night, so you can share. No problem.
No problem at all.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. I just make a small introduction of myself. I'm the responsible of the Advanced Materials Cluster from Catalonia. And I have just one slide, so a short presentation, because I know that time is gold now. And just to try to highlight the disruptions in terms of materials that we have detected in the cluster. At the top of the slide, you can see a simplified value chain. After this, the previous presentation, I feel like very bad, but okay. Just to just to present the value chain of materials that we have, the development and the raw materials procurement, then the manufacturing and processing, the wholesaling, retailing, and the service, and finally the use and recycling. So in our cluster, we have detected mainly, and also thanks to this group, I have to say also, because it's a collaborative work, a nice work, I think, I would like to say. 3 main disruptions. The first one, I think it's well known for everybody, the non-woven textiles, but particularly the melt blown. The problem here was that we have a strong dependency on Asiatic matic of this kind of non-woven, and the capacity to produce this melt blown with the non-woven polypropylene, it's quite limited in Europe. In the particular case in Spain, we don't have any machine to produce in the country this type of layer. So what has happened, I think almost everywhere, new alternatives has appeared using alternative textiles as natural, cotton or combination of natural materials or textiles, or using synthetic textiles as alternatives, for example, using polypropylene or combinations. Usually are multiple layers to try to give solutions. But this is good. The good point is that this is good to fabricate hygienic or reusable, even reusable masks for the population. That is already great. But is still missing the PPI equipment for sanitary people. At the best of my knowledge, we are not able to really find an alternative covering this equipment. And another point that for me has highlighted, and I need to tell you, is that there is no waste management system implemented in order to try to recover the waste management produced for this used mask of the population, and then to recycling or make the disinfection and the recycling. For me, it should be a big problem now or in a short term in Europe. The second point is the gowns. In this case, I think the shortage has been solved mainly by the adaptation of internal textile industry of each country. That's great. It means that we have flexibility in the textile industry. But I would like to say that after the peak, almost here in Catalonia or in Spain, we come back to import the importation again from Asia, provoking some discouragement to the internal industry. So after the effort, they feel like discouraged because they are using again the most cost-effective solution. The second one disruption is the PLA filament, and in this case for me it's really a matter of a limitation of raw material procurement, because maybe only 2 large corporations producing it, so it's like a bipolio, no monopoly but a bipolio, and this material has been used mainly to produce a facial protective mask by 3D printing. But I think that has more or less solved using alternative materials like PVC or PP as alternative. In this case of this equipment, it has been a lot of homologation issues. Also in-host validations has been done. And related to the material, nowadays there exist several startups working on the development of the complete PLA synthesis, that is a biomaterial, and the synthesis is quite complex. And finally, to finish, the third disruption is the PMMA or PVC sheet. Well known as a plexiglass for most of you. And after talking about with several companies, one a big raw material procurement company, and then from manufacturing ones, it seems that this disruption is more related to a limited capacity of production of this sheet by extrusion. It doesn't seem that it's related to raw material. In fact, this kind of plastics are are very used in automotive industry. And unfortunately, as you know, this automotive industry has blocked down during these days. So in fact, it seems that in terms of raw material, we have overstock. So what can be the alternative? It's true that just make a mention that it's not possible a company that is already doing extrusion, but another type of extrusion different from sheets, cannot be adapted to produce this kind of product. There are three types of extrusion: by injection, for producing sheet profiles, or of buffering. So it's not interchangeable, and this can be a problem to try to find alternatives. So an alternative can be by injection, but then you need a mold and a machinery, and it's very expensive. Maybe by polymerization, but also you need a mold, but it's quite expensive. Maybe a solution should be an aluminum mold to minimize costs and give a temporary solutions, because we need to think about that these PMMA sheets, now we have an exponential demand, but are quite permanent. I mean, it's not that you need one per week. When the demand is covered, maybe we will not need more for several years. It's quite durable. Another alternative is glass, but we need to consider that it's more fragile compared to plastic. And finally, transparent films could be a solution depending on the requirements of the requirements. For example, we can think about a taxi that needs to make a separation between on top and behind with the passenger. You can just put a film, a stretch between the two seats, and maybe it will be sufficient. And that's all for my side. Thank you very much.
Antonio, you're mute.
Sorry again. Thank you and congratulations, Dolores, for your excellent work as always. Now it's the turn for Patrick Guillemors from Plastipolis. Patrick, bonjour.
Bonjour, good morning.
Should I present your slides here, or would you prefer?
Yes,
okay.
You can make it.
Okay.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you for Antonio for the invitation for this specific session, and thank you to Dolores for having setting very nicely the scene, especially for plastic supply chain at the time being. And from my side, I will be short and to keep time enough for discussion. And bring to you our experience, let's say bottom-up experience as a cluster, as we are Plastipolis. The word about us, we are material cluster established 15 years ago now in France. Plastic, composite, polymer. We are moving now to rubber industry as well, and our focus, as for many colleagues. Cluster in Europe, we are in normal time we are focusing our effort to innovation and to prepare the future. But it's clear that during the past months we have been very much busy, and we are still now, and especially with you and ECA, about let's say short-term solution and how to bring to all the background, the knowledge background, technologies and solution as practical solution for the crisis. So our scope is plastic industry, let's say, on the converting side, on the user side, but we for a long time we want to as nicely as possible to cover the value chain and to include in our network beyond and aside the users, the converters of plastics of different kind, composites, material suppliers, and be relevant with the expectation of end markets, and clearly a big topic and challenge to for new development to have a complete global view and a relevant solution. network combined, of course, as for any cluster with RTOs and universities from our side, but also with the European colleagues and networks. We can move to the next slide, Antonio, if you want. So, as I said, as a cluster, and thank you again to ECA and Antonio for the first days of the crisis to have put the cluster on the front line. We have been discussing this with the France cluster, with the FPC on French side. It is really of high relevance for us to show our cluster are playing a role, and we are convinced of it. But thanks to your action, we have evidence of it that cluster bring added value, especially during such difficult times. So from the last session, we had different testimonies from cluster and how they are active during the last weeks. Same for us. First, we have been and we are still trying to have role by spreading information, and there are many information, and companies are very much overwhelmed about from that. But to let's say make selection, to highlight the key topics in terms of funding, in terms of technology, in terms of partnership. So this is, I think, part of our normal business, normal activity of clusters. What we have been working on as well is to bring the background technology, background projects, all what we did in the past to practical solution for emergency products, for PPE, for any kind of relevant and needed solution for the crisis, for masks, for screens, and we are still working on it on a more mid-terms for more durable and sustainable solution, especially for masks. For Dolores mentioned the points about reusability of devices, of equipment, and I will come to it just after. We want also very much to include in the thinking, the mindset, the end of life, and the capacity to have a circular system, even for and especially for single use or short use equipment, to not to face the controversy today with textile masks that are litters or and not very much control in terms of waste management. Europe, it's clearly for us and a point, and we are working with Cluster MAV, for instance, in this lightweight network, and we have joint action, we share practices, and Vanguard as well, and others. And next step would be being to prepare the recovery, and this is clearly a topic of the session today. Yes, you can move to yes. So concerning the discussion about let's say disruption, plastic industry is not focused on a single market, and packaging is big, automotive, construction, medical as well. So so there are plenty of value chain, and in parallel there are different kind of technology and materials. In Europe, there are 50,000 companies in the converting plastics or composite. 50 million ton plastics are used normal time, and you see you have different kind of let's say grades, commodity grades that are very much used in daily life product, and what has been mentioned before for protection equipment, for medical equipment. What is critical among the topic of disruption today, there are this PMMA or polycarbonate grades that are used, that are engineering plastics. They are today, they are not a big volume, as you see, big volume materials, but they bring normally they are used for medical or automotive application, and but they have shown their interest and today for emergency equipment. And so this is the situation that was just before the crisis. You see, we are dealing with not big volume, big quantity plastics, but with a very specific performance, and that are very much of interest today. So in the next slide, just to see the picture, but we never did such a sophisticated value chain analysis as shown by JRC, and I would be very from our side very much interested to work on with JRC about such a detailed in-depth analysis and how to have data and to make this analysis. But just to show some numbers, yes, you have seen we are using 50 million tons plastics during the years. There are more than 300 million ton plastic material produced in the world in normal time, and Europe is producing 60, so 80% only, and it is stable for years. So Europe is not, let's say, dependent for most of the grades, plastic grades. For engineering plastics, it's also true. Maybe there are with big chemical company like BASF and others, there are capacity in Europe, but it's clear there is for this industry a situation of dependency with the rest of the world. It's not surprising, I think, for you. But this is clearly something we could work on to refine the analysis and also make a segmentation between different end markets. So to conclude this overview or what we have observed from our side, what could be and what could we consider for the next steps? Today, as mentioned by Dolores, there is for different kind of protection equipment, there is a need of for instance, these transparent plastics. There is a big delay of supply for the users. The point is that there is at least two segments in the value chain. The raw material producer itself, but there is no shortage or despite difficulty of let's say supply. But the point of difficulty is the supply in semi-products, being sheets, foils, and that are produced by medium or with a group and disperse, maybe scatters group of companies. And this is something that make difficult the access to for the urgent needs to such a supply. So this is part of the situation. This is we could consider and still in progress, and it has been already mentioned for this protection equipment to consider alternative material. PET is used for packaging normally. It's a good option for different application today, used from outside with different companies. And the paradox today is due to the crisis, the price of plastics material, raw material, commodity material, but also engineering material is very low due to the breakdown of the market, but also the very low price of the oil. And so there are no let's say opportunity to consider. There is no bottlenecks in terms of cost on this side, and alternative material is very option. And what we have tried to do, thanks to cluster, but JRC could really help, is to share information and use platform for between let's say supply and demand to avoid let's say misinformation or loss of information for the users and for the let's say at the European scale and not at a single country scale. And for more long-term perspective, even we are dealing today for such application with emergency project with safety that could maybe change in a couple of months, hopefully. This is clear. We have to work on a more long-term solution. We have been we are working with some companies and European partners on reuse and material development that would make and enable to reuse, to have as high performance as possible for such application. And the point being to have a business model behind. The value chain is very let's say heterogeneous in terms of companies. You have big chemical company, you have medium size, you have SMEs, and the point is to find a way that each segment of the value chain will have a business value. Otherwise, it will not work. And so this is something that in construction I would say to share with you and to prepare. And the point also to conclude is, and especially for plastic, as you know, 3 months ago, plastic was very much on the spotlight regarding single use and sustainability, and we have been working a lot on it. And we have to keep it in mind. There is the Green Deal framework, and for this long-term, let's say, perspective, to have to include in the scope, really in the front line, is the point of circularity and sustainability, and work with the value chain to have the most relevant solution as possible. So this is different ideas for sharing with you, but it's clearly something to refine.
Merci beaucoup, Patrick. Wonderful. Thank you. And we will jump quickly to Athanasios because we are quite late and we need to reserve some time to the discussion. So Athanasios, thank you. You are here and I will share your presentation. Do you prefer to do it
Yes,
directly?
please do it. Yeah,
Okay.
you can share it. Good morning, everybody. As you are preparing, I would like to say I'm very happy to give this presentation and also to see that this work at JRC is advancing at that level. I had the honor and the privilege to be in the board of governors of the JRC for 6 years, and this kind of very quantitative and very careful work. It's absolutely a necessary element for what we are trying to achieve with our activities in the Cluster Alliance. What I will present today is an overview and of one case study that emerged in the European Cluster Alliance in response to the disruption in the ecosystems, in the industrial ecosystems that has been published a couple of weeks ago. This is a joint work. You can see there the contributors in the first slide. In the interest of timing, I will not refer. Many of them are already presenting, like Dolores and Patrick, and are also in the audience. So if you like to move to the next slide. Our motivation, as I said, is the disruptions that are brought about by the crisis in industrial ecosystems. The Commission, in this communication on just a few days ago, came out with this new plan about repair and prepare for the next generation, and identifies 14 industrial ecosystems that they will experience these disruptions. So if you can move on to the next slide. We have been trying to apply a very hierarchical and at the same time structured approach to this by identifying the various elements that are necessary in this complex system. So our focus today is industrial value chains that are, of course, driven by specialization, and they can be disrupted. I make also the parenthesis, the value chain and the supply chain are not the same thing, but they are very much interrelated. I think we could use this interchangeably in that context that we have here. It could be industrial value / supply chain. Of course, at the starting point, we have the individual companies, the individual actors, the individual islands of excellence, as we term them, that they are driven by individuality, trying to make their, trying to be players in the market and to have, to survive and thrive at the same time. And what we have now been experiencing is a kind of higher level of interaction. This level that we describe as co-evolving ecosystems. These co-evolving ecosystems are driven by synergy, and a key player or a key element in these co-evolving ecosystems is the notion of keystone agents, keystone species in the biological sense, that are somehow defining connectivities. They are defining potentials. So their concentration could be very small, but their impact in the ecosystem could be very, very high. And this is exactly copied from the biological systems analogy. And this is a framework that we like to use in the analysis of this disruption. So if you go to the next one, the name of the game here is to have a structured approach, as I said, and bring all the players under the same umbrella. The same umbrella is the European Alliance Against the Coronavirus as part of the European Cluster Alliance. There has been a contract that has with the European Commission that has been secured thanks to the excellent work of Antonio and his colleagues. And we are working on setting up this support for the EU Rapid Alert function. So at that level, the structure that we adopt is a network structure where we have nodes. We have a very broad definition of the nodes because it includes the industrial ecosystems, but also other activities and capabilities. We have introduced here the notion of a curator, which is a high-level expert group that have a helicopter view and are able to understand the individual processes and products and players that are involved and are able to act as a kind of playmaker, market maker, coordinator to move on and do this in an optimized fashion, the organization of the interactions. And hopefully we are able to identify institutions, companies that, as we said, will have a very keystone role. If you go to the next one, the name of the game is always resilience and criticality, and we adopt a very quantitative definition. This is inspired by classic network analysis, where resilience is not a property of the node, but it is a property of the network. You are resilient because you belong into a network that makes you resilient. And this is, again, one of the major functions that clusters will offer to their members. So we see clusters as catalysts for resilience of critical functions of the industrial ecosystem, and they will have also a dual role. They will be assisting both the people and the businesses in this crisis. A related also notion here, which is of course borrowed by complex system dynamics, is that criticality could be driven by external factors, some disruption or some change, but it could also be self-organized, where we see emergent behavior arising due to the action of various actors of the entire system. And we have seen very excellent examples of that in the response of various players of the system in making protective equipment, masks, and all this emergency response to the pandemic with do-it-yourself solutions and so on. If you move on to the next slide, what the European Alliance has, Cluster Alliance has made is to create a survey so that it can give a forum to its members to report these disruptions, because we need to have clear definitions. You can see the link there. You can go in and look at the details. A very important contribution here has come actually from the Commission, from Marek, where he introduced Porter's model and how to analyze the supply value chain in order to illustrate at which point these disruptions occur, what is their character, both structurally and also temporally. Is it something short? Is it a delay that it is caused by some function, or will it be permanent? And hopefully we are aiming at finding who would be the best, let's say, problem solver. Could it be solved internally by the members of the clusters or in their external ecosystem, or is public intervention necessary, or maybe indispensable? If you move on to the next slide, we have decided to use as a case study this disruption of the transparent protective sheets market came out of an anecdotal reference to some journal. One of the colleagues, Celine Rosenblatt from Lausanne, brought it up in one of the discussions, and then Antonio said, why don't we try to see how we would respond to this, let's say, stimulus as a cluster alliance, and use this as a case study to structure our approach and our response to the other potential disruptions that will be identified. So there has been a collection of information. You can see it here. I will not go into the details. I think also Dolores showed in her presentation what has been the evolution history of that disruption. Initially, it was thought that it is due to raw materials, but eventually it has come up that it is most likely a problem of capacity, although still the verdict throughout Europe, I don't think it is already settled. And then maybe there is a kind of two-face coin here, that in some materials it could be, like we heard for the PLA, maybe it is a raw materials problem, but in some other case, like in the plexiglass, the PMMA, and so on, the polycarbonate acrylic sheets, transparent sheets, could be just a limitation of production capacity. So in the next slide, as we have adopted this as a case study, we try to describe this disruption and see how we could, be useful. So first of all, I would like to make a distinction here that when we talk about the disruption and in the supply chain, it is, of course, very nice to talk about the material and try to find alternatives to the material. I myself am hardcore technologist and engineer, and I like this. But if we see it from the point of view of the consumer or the customer, if you will, what we have here always is function. So let's reflect for a moment. The transparent protective sheet is a product that its function is to protect from the direct droplet transmission, that to provide transparency so that you have optical view, and to have the necessary structural and mechanical integrity. So this is the function that we are missing, and this function we are missing because now the demand has been very high due to this situation, and we have the market shortages that are reported. Why is the case? I think, as I said, most likely due to production capacity, but maybe also some raw material shortage. When is this disruption recorded? It is now, and probably it will be, I say there forever to be a little bit provocative, as the lockdown is lifted and more people will want to go back to a normality which cannot exist as we used to know it, they will need more and more of this protection. Where will it be needed? Everywhere where you want to have this protection in place, in counters, in offices, in taxis, in other areas. And the customer or the user base here is both individuals but also small groups. So the way to mitigate it, of course, it depends on the why, on the origin, and we could, of course, do more by using less materials, optimizing the resources, using alternative materials, or repurposing existing materials, recycling, or do innovation in production, as Dolores hinted in some area. And I would like to say here that when we talk about innovation in production, it could be innovation in production of an existing component or an existing material, or it could be in producing something completely different that still, though, provides the function that we are after. If you go to the next one. So the current status of this investigation is as follows. We did the initial detection. There has been a lot of discussions with cluster members in various countries. There is a process of information collection and fact-checking going on, and it identifies here raw material suppliers, distributors, converters, distributors of the converted, of the synthesized material, manufacturers according to various classifications. And the goal here is to come up with an innovative proposal identification, and we have been examining in very big detail the potential of generating a challenge competition for the cluster members, but also this can be, I think, discussed and be open to the entire ecosystem. What is really important here is to create critical mass at the system level, and the contribution and the active partnership with the JRC is absolutely necessary here, both due to the existence of tools that we have seen with using network analytics and all this very nice visual information and quantitative information that it is backing it, but also in order to have a more harmonized approach into this kind of problems, which our prediction is that it will be more the norm than the exception in the future, not only due to the coronavirus. We know that there is resource competition, there is a lot of conflicts that are arising due to the way that our civilization and our way of life is evolving. So I think this has we have a lot to gain at the cluster level and at the society level by doing this creation of synergies and a more organized approach. So if you go to the other one, to the next slide, Antonio. If you want more information, there is a member questionnaire that has been distributed. It is already, I think, the link, you have seen it. There will be a draft. Now it's a draft, but there will be a report on that contract by the commission that addresses this issue of the rapid alert function and how the various ecosystems, industrial ecosystems, would be responding to it. And of course, there is the site for the alliance that one can get more information. If you go to the next slide, the rapid alert function will consume a lot of the activities of the alliance. This is our chance to spend as much of our effort and our resources in order to be better prepared for the next wave that will come, and to see if we have learned anything out of this pandemic. And if you go to the next slide, Antonio.
Sorry, I lost the. Sorry, no, no. It's sorry because I don't know what happened. I am seeing the screen on the. Okay, now here. No, sorry, I lose your presentation. I'm going back to
it is like in Mission Impossible. It is programmed to self-destruct if a certain time limit is advised. So this is, if you want to put this in the larger screen, I like to give here a little perspective on. We see clusters as networks of dynamic social nonlinear innovation. So clusters are our way of defending and protecting all the players of that system, companies, people, jobs, in times of a crisis. On the left side, you see there a photo that I took several years ago in Minneapolis. There is a stone wall in a very famous company there, which name is synonymous with innovation, 3M, and it shows what are the various elements there. Values, vision, commitment, invention, and this leads to imagination, discovery, so that we can move on. But at the same time, it engages and empowers people, cultures in a very diverse fashion. In the right-hand side, you see the largest assembly of surfers a few years back that has been assembled in South Africa to be able to ride all together that wave. And I see this as a very pictorial view and motivation for what the alliance is trying to do, what Antonio and his colleagues have been doing, with a lot of personal effort and personal cost during these last 2 months in mobilizing our collective potential to find out solutions and be inspired by presentations like this today from the JRC, and how to develop in a very fast and sometimes maybe completely new way our responses, or if you will, our defenses against these threats that are that just appeared and made life very different for everyone. So this is what I wanted to say today.
Thank you very much, Athanasios. We have had a wonderful presentation. I think it's a very complete day. For your information, we are going to publish in, I hope, 1 minute, a post in the ECCP COVID-19 Forum, where you will find all the presentation in PDF format of today. Our team will share the link shortly, I hope. Okay, so we have few minutes, but we will try to have some dialogue. I know that Eva Revilla has been promoting also the idea of organizing a specific session for the green recovery, the Green Deal, how to implement green and all that measures that we are thinking about. And for sure, we will completely collaborate on that effort. Anyway, comments, questions? No comment, no questions? And for sure that there will be some of them.
Good morning, Antonio. I have just one comment that I would like to emphasize. From this second part of the session today, maybe we have focused in a short-term challenge in terms of materials and disruptions provoked by the COVID. But it's true that the UCR group has presented more long-term and strategic issues that can appear with material and should be nice maybe to have a session day also. I think it's Eva who proposed in this sense more strategic and short-term alternatives of the materials, or what can be the shortage due to these future in vehicles or other industries. And that's all from my side. Thank you.
Do you mean one strategic or short term? Sorry, because I probably misunderstood.
Strategic.
Long term view. Okay. Thank you. More comments or questions?
I would like to ask a question, Antonio, to the colleagues from the JRC. This the underlying tool that is used to visualize and describe the connections. Is it something that is available to be adapted in other contexts, and like those that we discuss here? Is there a way that we could have a more technical session or interaction about the actual implementation of these approaches? How could we arrange to do this so that fast?
Yeah. Hi, Athanasios. Yes, definitely we could have a separate or dedicated meeting on the IT tool. Practically, it's a design, a quite specialized design that is hosted in our server at JRC. So I think as a first reply, the possibility of using it, making it usable by anybody online now is extremely limited. It is also, part of the raw material information system, which is the main Commission's knowledge hub on raw materials, on non-fuel, non-agricultural raw materials, and there are some issues with the data protection and so on. So, but we can definitely have a more dedicated to IT discussion. I don't know if my colleague Theodor Ciută is still on, or he was here. If not, then we could arrange at a later stage a meeting.
Thank you very much.
If I may just to add a little bit more on that, is that it's not the access to the raw material data and so on, but the skeleton and the structure, and the use of the Sankey diagrams and so on. It could be used also or enriched, if you will, to add also energy flows and economic flows into the cluster companies, into the cluster members, into the cluster into the cluster of clusters approach, and then this gives us a way to manage and visualize also interactions within the cluster. So I was not referring into using it for the use that has been developed, but I was referring to use this as a structure, as a tool that can be populated with data from the clusters to be able to describe these network effects and the network dependencies in the cluster ecosystem.
Yeah, okay, I actually understood very well, and this is why I'm saying probably indeed we need a dedicated session with the IT specialist to investigate that. This is also our interest in the long run. So in principle, we are extremely dedicated to enlarge the scope from what we are doing now, that is some biotic plus the critical raw materials, mainly from the minerals and some important base metals, to the larger range of all raw materials, maybe except for the food, for the agricultural raw materials that are developing on a separate system in the JRC and in the Commission.
Good morning. Especially because of what you just mentioned about agricultural being for food, we, as Dolores showed, and I think another presentation too, some materials, some new materials that can be used for industry are now coming from biomaterials from agriculture. How do you cross that? And also how updated is this work, this fantastic work, let me say, with the new materials that are being created every day on these challenges. Thank you.
I suppose the question is also for us, yeah?
Yeah, so yes, yeah. Yes.
So we the work on let's say biotic raw materials is quite new, because as it was presented, we started in the beginning from the critical raw materials. And if one looks at the history in the Commission of the list of critical raw materials, we'll see that actually most of the critical raw materials belong to the minerals and actually to the metal category. There are only a few candidates that are under investigation every 3 years when the critical raw material list was created, that belong to the biotic side. But indeed, the intention is, especially that recently we enlarged our team with our colleagues dealing with biotic materials and the LCA, and you saw a little bit of a presentation on plastics today from that group. We intend to integrate more and more, starting with the basic raw materials like wood and wood for materials, wood for biomass, wood, all these aspects, and then to enlarge to other biotic materials. So for the moment, my answer is we are in the beginning with these materials, but this is clearly the next step in our expansion.
Thank you.
So it's 10 o'clock. I think it has been a very, very interesting session. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. I am sure that we will find fruitful opportunities to collaborate in the future. And so we just need to look for them. Marek, do you want to speak? You want to close?
Yes.
Last commentary.
Yeah. Thank you very much for all of this. If you can hear me, yeah? Can you hear me?
Far, but yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So thank you very much for all the presentations, JRC and colleagues from EEK. I would say this is all identification of issues which can be solved in mid and long term, and we can work on this. And this is very good. This is one of the inputs of the alert. But I'm posing myself the question at this very moment of in short-term urgency. If I'm looking particularly on the slide from Doris on disruptions, if there is any disruption which is at this very moment critical, that we should organize a separate session with plastic organizations, plastic associations, because there is one of element of components in the supply chains missing with shortages. that we can dedicate session on solving the issue with the shortage in the supply chain in short term. But of course, everything what we are saying here is relevant because like homologation or the issues with the transition into green, this all will be important, and this gives us as well the hint how to further explore. But for in COVID-19 relation issues, if what would be the main short-term urgency need that we want to have launch mechanism of trying to find solution would be my question.
If I understood well, okay, the first question is if there is a shortage. I think that from what we have heard today, and we have Dolores with us and others, the shortage is still there, at least as reported by our cluster members, but we can verify it with the survey that we just launched yesterday, okay? And how to approach it, I think that it could be one idea to launch the challenge, but it's something that I don't know. Perhaps there are other alternatives. I would like just to close. We can speak about that or exchange through email and think about that. Any comment to the questions from Marek, Athanasios, or Patrick?
Yes, I think for my comment, I think it's important for in the next steps to involve say industry organization and to get from them complete pictures from the situation, and in parallel work on what has been proposed to review the value chain and how to deal with the shortage and to prepare the future. And through this cluster to cluster approach.
Thank you, Patrick. Any other comment? No. So we close. Thank you very much, everybody, and we continue tomorrow. Tomorrow we have changed the schedule for the weekends, and we are going to meet only on Saturday from 9 to 10:30. Sundays for now are holiday for us. And and next week we have a very interesting schedule of different reviewing of ecosystems. So you are invited to participate in on every one of them. Thank you very much. Bye.
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 Have a nice day.